What I will be talking about today is lots of small different ideas, lots of small ideas. For those of you familiar with presentations, I hope you get some extra ideas about this. Those of you not familiar with presentations, I hope you get some ideas from this. Biggest question is why would you spend so much time on your presentation trying to make it good? Well, mostly for me because bad presentations can kill. And I'm not talking about people just dying from boredom watching yet another PowerPoint presentation, but I forgot the sound actually. But for example, it's well known that the Challenger disaster was partly due to the inability of the engineers to convey their concerns to the management. So they came with one overly complicated slide where they said, well, we've never tested these O-rings this low in temperature and we're not sure it's going to go right. And management didn't understand a thing and therefore went through with the launch with the resulting effects. Also, it takes a lot of time to make these slides full of equations and full of text and put all the graphs in place. And I'd rather spend that time just preparing my talk as opposed to my slides. And the good presentations can get you jobs and fame and prizes and all kinds of interesting things. But mostly, I think you should care a little bit about your presentation because your story is worth it. You spent a lot of time researching and that must have been for a good reason, so might as well tell the rest of the world about that. So how would you go about making a presentation once you've decided to try and make your presentation a bit nicer? I will split this up into three general parts. One is the setting up of your presentation. Second one is visualization. This includes the slides. And the third one is everything else, the things that didn't fit in the above two categories. So when it comes to setting up your talk, start at the right place. And because I've seen and heard of many people that whenever they get told that they have a presentation, they sit down in front of their laptop and they open PowerPoint, blank slide. What will I put on my slide? So they just start filling slides from slide number 1 and see how far they get. But the most important thing about your presentation is not the slides, it is the story behind it. And for engineers and scientists, this story usually follows a pretty standard flow. I see that I don't have screen. Okay, no. Follows a pretty standard flow, but you can actually try to cast this into story form. Now, when it comes to storytelling, it's one of the things we do best as humans. It's a thing we've done for millions of years. The art of storytelling is designed to inspire, to captivate, and to communicate your ideas. But most of all, it's just the best way of getting a message across. So it's quite important to investigate the art of storytelling for more impact of your presentation. One of the ways you can go about this is to first write down all of the ideas that you have about, you're told how you're giving a presentation at that night conference, so you go and sit in front of a whiteboard or in front of a table with lots of post-its, write down everything you know. Then things that are not relevant to your story or that you simply don't have time for telling, those are the things you cover. After that, you think about your audience. Who's in your audience? What do they know? What's their sort of general level of expertise? And it's important here to not just think about this person, the one professor which is very high in the field and that you really want to impress. It is really about the rest of the audience. What general level of things do they know? What don't they know? So then you take your talk and you erase the things that they either already know or that they don't care about. So that leaves you with a lot fewer ideas. These you can then group so that you can house them under more general topics in your talk, and arrange them so that they follow a certain timeline. And I think one of the better divisions of this is to try and spend 40% of your time on the introduction and 60% on the rest of your talk. And this is because most of the people aren't really interested in the nitty-gritty details of what it is that you did, but more about the general story of what you're trying to say. Then, in your story, it's very important to captivate your audience. I mean, they've already heard 15 talks about all kinds of topics, and they're tired just before lunchtime. Find something that will immediately attract the audience towards you. For example, this guy comes up on his talk holding a basket of laundry, is standing in front of a washing machine. And I should tell you, this guy is a statistician. and his talks are about statistics. But immediately he comes in with a good story and hangs his entire statistics talk on the concept of washing in third world countries. And then there's this doctor, I think, Dr. Jill Taylor, whose talk was fairly reasonable, right up until the moment that she brings in a live human brain, or well, not a live human brain, but a real human brain. You know, this grosses out the audience, but it immediately captivates their attention because who takes with a spinal cord attached and everything. So this immediately draws the attention of the audience. And it's great. I mean, they've been talking about this for a long time. You can open it up. Fascinating stuff. So try to find something. Try to find something about your research that's really captivating, and either show it or hang on to our story about it. Let's continue to the next part: visualizing. Once you have a story, how do you support it with slides? And it's important here that there's no. You shouldn't feel obliged to make a slide or anything. If your story doesn't need any visuals to support it, then by all means show nothing. The slides are really not that important. They're not an integral part of your story. It's you telling the story to your audience. So let's take a look at one of the slides of one of my friends, Alessandro Kalmans. He graciously allowed me to use this. It's not a bad slide to start with. So this is his slide from his chemistry talk at the NCCC conference last time, I think. And from this, your eye will immediately be drawn to a couple of things. First of all is the equation over here. Equations like this, you can't understand them in the time that this slide is up. Not in a minute. It will take you a couple of minutes to understand what this is about. So this might be distracting for the audience. Then here he has a very interesting legend for the colors here, which is very smartly built. I mean, the top two are the sulfur and the bottom two are molybdenum, the bulk on the left side and edge on the right side. But it's very smart, but it again takes a moment to realize what is actually said. We have a graph here with crosses and some labels here which are not immediately clear what it is. We have some ends over here and I don't immediately know what they do. But most of all, this slide uses a template. And when we look at this template, we can see a couple of things immediately. We see that the usable space is reduced by 25%. That means you have less space to put your message across. And then it forces every slide to have a title over here, which is unnecessary. It has a picture in the top right-hand corner with some, well, I don't know if you guys can see it at the back, but there's some stainless steel and supposed to be some glass, and I really don't know what it's there for. And all these little distractions, which are hardly ever useful, but they have to be interpreted by the brain. and they take away all my time or all my attention. And the time it takes you to sort of interpret all these things makes me lose what the actual speaker is talking about. Because whenever there's something on the slide, I have to look at it, think about it. When I'm thinking about that, I can't quite listen to the speaker. And then the next slide comes up and you think, oh, I might be able to catch up, but it's full of equations over here, which, well, I can recognize, but I can't immediately tell what's so special about this one, and lots of messages on one slide. Keep the number of messages on one slide to an absolute minimum. One message per slide, otherwise you just confuse your audience. They will lose the track of your story, and the more audience you lose, the less feedback you'll get later on. So the way I would go about redesigning this slide would be to take away this equation. If people want to know it, they can ask me about it later. They can read it in the paper, read it in the book. To have a less confusing color scheme here, I'll just show you what I did. To make the graph bigger, put big labels at the bottom, because the most important people are always at the back, so you want them to be able to read this. Increase the size of the graph. Put everything at the place on the graph where it's actually relevant. Don't put arrows there. It's going to be very difficult to go back and forth all the time. In fact, I can simplify this even further. There are crosses here which I think indicate points where Alessandro calculated these values. But the crosses are not important. On top of that, we have a lot of numbers here. We can reduce that. So I think my final slide would look something like this. No crosses, just a couple of numbers here so you can get an idea about the order of magnitude, clear labels, and not much else on the slide. So whenever you do use text on the slide, you use text only for the most important messages. Don't overload people with text. Whenever there's text on it, they'll start reading it involuntarily, sometimes even. When they start reading it, they're not listening to you. When it comes to graphics, which should be the majority of your slides, make them so that they fill the entire slide. Don't make them small and put 4 figures on one slide. One message per slide. Put your figure so big that even the people in the back can see it easily. Graphs, same thing, with an additional note that you should make every graph specifically for your presentation. If you just lift a graph out of literature, it's not going to look good, because in literature they use very thin lines. The fonts are a lot smaller, and there are generally things done in the literature which will never work in which will never work in a graph like this. Whenever you need to annotate your graph, annotate it on the graph itself. Don't use legends. Don't use different colors maybe, but things like different shapes of the points. Nobody's going to be able to see whether this is actually a round or a square or a hexagon at the back. So put the labels actually at your graphs. When you have slightly more complicated graphs, you can build them up step by step as you're talking about it, so people will actually know which is which. You can also use graphs to introduce mathematical concepts, and this nicely brings me to my next point, which is the equations. Unfortunately, we have to use equations, but please don't put the real equation on the slide, because there's going to be so many terms in them and you have to explain all of them, and it's going to be very, very tedious. What you can try to do is try to explain the concept first graphically, and then from graphics go to the equation, and don't write out, as I said, don't write out everything, but try to simplify your equations, and where necessary change the equation or expand it, but expand only the things that you're going to talk about, only the things relevant to your talk. And then if you really want to capture the attention of the audience, you can use two things: motions and movies. You've already seen some motions here. If they're easy to make for you, which on the Mac they are, but in PowerPoint they're not necessarily so easy to make, so don't bother. But if they're easy to make, you can really use them for some nice, not only to attract the attention, but also to convey messages. Then there are also lots of people who will have wonderful ideas about color, and they're right. I mean, this guy analyzed a lot of these TED Talks for color and correlated the colors that are used with the emotions that you're trying to evoke in your audience. So you can tune the colors to what you want to achieve. However, when we are going to a conference, we usually go to very old conference venues where they have shitty beamers and that are not calibrated at all. So it's very difficult to trust that the colors actually come over the way they should. So just stick to high contrast slides and you'll be fine anyway. Movies you can use as well. You can, we're genetically designed to really immediately focus on moving pictures, so you can use that to your advantage to attract the attention of the audience. And this is again something I used earlier. So last section, everything else. I'm going to give a couple of hints and tips, things that you can do to improve life for you, things that you can do to improve life for your audience. What you can do for you is to make sure that you can set up a presenter's display. So this is what I see on that screen. This is an advantage to me because I not only have the current slide, but I also have the next slide on there. So I know what my talk is going to go towards. I know which direction I have to talk to. I have some timers here to make sure that I don't overrun my time. That's one of the worst things you can do, overrun time. And some notes, which I can put over here, I hardly ever use. Anyway, both Keynote and PowerPoint can do presenter's display. I actually like the one from PowerPoint a little bit better than Keynote. Anyway, make sure you can do that. Then clicker. If you have one of these or any other clicker, just make sure that they're radio controlled, not infrared. You stand pointing towards something that looks safe. But this means that I can move around and that I can actually, you know, if I'm so inclined, move towards the audience and still be able to advance my slides. Brings me to the next point. Use your own computer. Many conference venues will tell you, oh, please give us your slides and we'll put it on the central computer, and it never works. It's never any of the fonts available that you use. It's always going to look a little bit shit, and then you have this motion and it's not going to work. And so tell those people that you have a movie in your presentation. This seems to be a magical word. I have a movie in my presentation. Oh, in that case, use your own laptop. Use your own laptop, you know it works. It's a lot more relaxing for you. You can publish your own videos. I'll tell a little bit about that after I talk a little bit about confidence. This is quite related to it. Many people say they feel inconfident in front of an audience, and I think if you don't feel inconfident in front of an audience, there must be a screw loose with you. However, you can do a couple of things to train confidence. One of them is practice. Practice your talk so you know what you're going to say, you know what slides are coming up. This is one of the most important things. That will build confidence that you know what you're talking about, you know you're not going to exceed your time. Or enthusiasm. This guy, Clifford Stoll, he's wonderfully enthusiastic. If you're confident, you're automatically, well, you can become enthusiastic. If you're enthusiastic, you automatically gain confidence. You don't automatically have to behave like him, but I think it's a wonderful example of how you can be enthusiastic and therefore confident. So what I said before was publish your videos. I've done this with a couple of my videos. So this one has been on for 1 year with 2,400 views. I mean, these numbers you will never get at any conference. one's not so. That one's just a week old, 30 views. I think it's at 40 or 50 now, but still. So it doesn't necessarily have to go fast, but you will reach a much broader audience than what you would have done for no additional effort. I mean, if you've prepared the talk, you know what you're going to say, just record it and put it on the internet. There might be interested people out there. And I think this one is the one with the most amount of views. It's about 15,000 views over 2 accounts, spread out over 5 years. And it's a very short, very short video. So try and make a video, try and put it online. It doesn't cost you any effort, but it might actually make you famous. Well, I'm not famous, but it might make other people famous, right? Everything else, things you can do for your audience. The one thing that you should really do is practice, so that you do not run over your time. If you're given 20 minutes, practice with 15 minutes, that you can tell your story at a decent pace within 15 minutes. You know you're going to be able to do it. This will help you relax, and this is very good for the audience, because if you exceed your allotted time, the goodwill of the audience will drop like a stone. It's like 1 minute is 50% of 2 minutes. Nobody likes you anymore, no matter how good your presentation. Position and light. In Japan, they have a tendency. People have a tendency to go here and sit behind their computer and present their slides as if they're not important. Or what you get at conferences is you get a lectern. So you stand behind this barrier, which is not very conducive to contact with the audience. So stand close to the audience. I have a desk here, so I can't stand in front of the desk, but stand in front of the desk, move around a bit. Also make sure that there's enough light for the people to see you. After all, after your presentation, they have to be able to recognize you so they can talk to you. And it will prevent them from going to sleep. Pre-presentation preparation. Make sure that everything works 15 minutes before your presentation. It speaks for itself, but it still happens that people come up and go like, oh, yeah, my laptop doesn't work, I need to reboot, and then everything works like, So make sure everything works, and this will make you much more confident. And you can hand out handouts. This will stop people from writing too much on pieces of paper, because you've already written it down for them. And they have more time to listen to you. So, what do people say when they hear stories like this? Well, first thing I usually hear is, it's hard. It looks difficult to make, but I spend a lot less time on my slides than I did previously. I spend more time developing the story. So overall, I think the balance is about equal. But I'd rather spend my time preparing a story than preparing slides. Almost everyone. It takes too much of my time. I should emphasize the my. Oh no, this takes too much of my time. But this is actually a very arrogant statement. This says, 1 hour of my time, I can't bear to spend 1 hour of my time preparing a presentation. So all those 30 people in the audience times 20 minutes of their time is worth less than 1 hour of my time. So yeah, it can actually be a bit offensive if you see somebody present and it's very clear that they've taken 5 slides from one very old presentation and 6 slides from a slightly later one, and 2 they got from students, so they stand around there trying to figure out what it is the student wanted to say. Prepare your own slides and take a bit of time to develop your story. It's general improvement. This one I heard a lot. I'll put it on the slide so I don't forget it. So I know that I have to say that sentence. This is a risky thing to do, because, well, first of all, you're putting probably a lot of text on the slide which you want to read, and you're reading it like this. So that's the first thing. You're not contacting your audience. Second thing, these slides are not your notes, they're visuals for the audience. Now, your notes are over there on your presenter's display. At the moment they're really small. That's just an idea of a funny laptop. It has a very tiny screen. Anyway, you'll also risk making mistakes, and people will notice. If you forget to talk about something and it's on your slide, people will go like, "Huh, you've missed one." But if you don't put it on your slide and you forget about it, who's going to know? So don't put these messages, sentences, or entire sheets of text which sort of overflow over here. Don't put them on the slide. There's no purpose being there. Well, then the institute could be non-conductive. Send us your slides. Worse even, we'll print them out. This one was actually told to me by Nims. Not by my boss, fortunately, but I know other bosses do it. Send me your slides, I'll check them before the presentation. But the slides are not your story. I mean, your story is you telling the story. Your slides are half the story, or even less than half the story, so they're just going to be confusing. I tried to convince Nims to, I can write a summary for you if you want. Oh, no, we don't think that's going to be good enough. Okay, I can write annotated slides, Just make the same slides and put a little bit of text here and there. No, just send us your slides. So, okay, I send them my slides. It's about 150 slides, black background, printed on white paper. That was a waste. This thick in front of every person during my application talk. A tree has died for that. Right, next one. You have to use our templates. This is University of Eindhoven that says that, actually. But this is said by PR people who don't know anything about presenting. Well, they think they know, but they think it's more important to convey the company image, or your group name, or something like that. But as I said before, templates just mess up your entire presentation. They're confusing for the audience. If you have to use it, if they insist, use it for the first slide, and then after that, don't use it anymore. Only look at the first line. I had no time to prepare. People say this when they. I don't know why they say this. Because usually you know weeks in advance that you have a presentation, right? So you have plenty of time. Just spend a little bit of time every day. However, if you really have no time, if somebody came to you, I can give a presentation in 2 days. The thing you should do is forget about all these slides and focus on your story. You can perfectly well tell a story without slides. People have done it for years. But if you just focus on slides, the story is not going to be complete, and you're just going to be standing around here thinking about what it was again that you wanted to say. My topic is too difficult to present nicely. I hear this a lot. Oh yes, it's good for the marketers, to make presentations like this. But in science, things are different. And these are the people who don't know Garrett Lisi. There's apparently quite a few of them. This guy is a theoretical particle physicist. One of the most difficult fields in the world of science. Now, while his preparation, this guy was nervous. He was reading up his entire presentation from the notes on his screen. However, he is able to explain theoretical particle physics, or the essence of theoretical particle physics, using nothing but graphics. Here, for example, he starts out plotting all the particles on a one-axis, electric charge. And well, we don't have time for the entire video, but I can just skip on. Then he expands it, adds dimensions, and later on you see all of these particles, and he says, well, symmetry-wise, I think that's here. Symmetry-wise, you would expect particles here for a much higher symmetry. So these are being hypothesized. And then he says, well, even if we include 8 dimensions, I don't know how you do that, 8 dimensions, visualize it, he says, then we're suddenly missing a couple more particles. So he says, well, this is what we do in theoretical particle physics. We try to find particles which, or we try to find configurations which would give us a higher symmetry, and then hypothesize what these particles would be and where we could find them. So that I think is a very good presentation to watch if you think that science cannot be presented nicely. Anyway, that's it. I see, well, okay, I skipped somewhere in the middle, so it was about 35 minutes. These are the people on the TED Talks. There's one missing, which was Cliff Stoll, the very enthusiastic guy. I really recommend these TED Talks. Images that I've used were either mine or Creative Commons images from the internet. Slides were from Alessandro Cavan's, and the shuttle video was from NASA. Some interesting web links. TED, where you will find very many good presentations. It's a good place to just watch some video and get some good ideas. Presentation Zen, I really like this site. A person with lots of good ideas. About what presentation should be. I learned a lot from him. Then there's my YouTube channel, or just YouTube in general. I think YouTube in general, there are lots of other good videos on, not necessarily about science. There's of course the king of presenting, Steve Jobs recently passed away, but his presentations are still online. You can also see how he presents his difficult topics in an easy way. And then I have some more websites, photo website, and my work weblog. So thank you all very much for your attention, and I hope it was instructive.